the hardest thing ever is when you're on a path or you're doing something, you're creating something, and your mind is telling you to stop because it's hard or whatever reason, it's just telling you to stop. And the hardest thing to determine is that resistance or is that intuition? And she basically is saying, like, am I on the right path? Like, is it my intuition that this is probably really not the right move and I need to pivot and go do something else? Or is that resistance saying, stop because you can't do it, but if you keep going, you probably could? And so that's the hardest thing.
That's the constant battle, isn't it? Am I running towards something or away from something?
Yeah.
Is this the mice or the cheese?
Right.
The cat or the cheese? You're the mouse.
The mice. Wait, say it again. Is this the mice? No, is this the cat or the cheese? Is this
the cat or the cheese? Like, we're all mice, and it's like we're either running toward cheese or away from a cat. And it's like, if you can get both of those in your favor, that's the idea, right? In your mind, like, I'm running from this, what I don't want, and toward this that I do want, cheese. You get both of those working in your favor, and you're like, oh, that's like driven motivation. Yeah,
and I think quite honestly, to be vulnerable here, I think with a lot of things that we're creating on the side, like I'm scared a little bit of like what's possible, right? And I'm like
100%.
But I'm also like, is this the right thing? Is this like, am I doing all the right things? Like, is this like, should I be doing this? Like, some of those roadblocks or those valleys of despair, those mental battles that you have, it's just like anything else, any entrepreneur, like as you start building, or not even an entrepreneur, as you start working on something, like, because there is nothing, like, it doesn't show progress, like, it doesn't show what you're looking for right away. It takes so much time to build and get to a level that you're trying to get. And it's almost like the gap and gain mentality that we've talked about before. Mm-hmm. But I struggle with that all the time. Like, is this the right path? Am I supposed to be doing this? And I constantly go back to, yes, I am. Like, just keep going. Like, just fight the resistance. Like, fight like, there's so many times where I just want to quit and just like hang it up. I'm like, man, I gave it a good run, but it's not like, and I'm talking about all the OppoFlow stuff, right? Like, it's so fun and creative, but the stuff that you're trying to build, is it intuition or is it resistance? And I believe it is resistance, but sometimes it's like, it's hard. It tricks you of like,
I'll tell you this, though,
somewhere else.
One thing I know for certain is that if you weren't spending your time doing that, life would throw you other areas while you're stagnant in your spare time that are going to create just as much pain.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. If you're not working and pushing yourself in that way, the emptiness of mediocrity and just non-participation in the pursuit is going to provide a whole different set of pain that would have you
constantly regretting what if, all that, right? Like, why not go see
escapism, all the above? Yeah.
Why not, like, who cares? Like, why not just go for it? Like, why not put yourself out there? If you want to be on, like, we just talked about Aspire stages, like, why not go be on one of those stages? Like, why not do everything you can to try and get on one of those stages? And then if you get on the stage and you don't like it, then you'll get your answer. But why not go for it, right?
Or if you don't want to be on stage, which is many people, build something and be the puppet master behind that product or that creation. Like, that's where joy comes. That's where we get back to, like, that is what separates us from the animals, is this consciousness to bring something from here up in our heads, in our hearts, into physical reality. And when we're not doing that, I'm telling you, that's why people love, like, it's reproductive. That's why we love having kids, because you're reproducing yourself on this planet. And it's the same thing with your ideas, your thoughts, your dreams, your desires. That's where happiness and fulfillment come from.
100%. I think the hardest thing about your ideas is, how many ideas do you have? Millions, right? We've all got like just millions of ideas. Like, oh, I can do this. I can do that. I can do this.
And they're constantly coming and passing and evaporating. And
then you start, and you're like, no, it's not good. And then you do this, and you're like, no, it's not good. It's like hard to find the thing that sticks, right? And then to make that idea come to fruition, it's going to take two things. It's either going to take a massive, massive amount of work ethic and grit and determination, or capital. If you've got money to fund an idea for like unlimited, like to just let it ride until, paying other people to do it or whatever, you could do it that way. But if you don't have money, you just have to fight through that resistance. It's going to keep telling you to stop, and you have to push. Yep. Yeah. You have to push through.
So I believe I brought him up on the podcast before. He's been so impactful for me, but Stephen Pressfield.
Okay, he's the one that said a quote that Jen Gottlieb said before. It's great. Go ahead.
His stuff. I know I throw a lot of books out there, but for the listeners, they're quick, such quick reads. But the first book, I read them all. The first book that changed my life was Turning Pro, and I had been in sales for 7 years before I really felt like I turned pro. And it was after reading this book. It was like, yeah, this is my profession. This is what I do, but I'm not treating it like a pro. And his whole coin term is the difference between when you turn pro is the pros don't miss. Like they show up and do the work no matter what. Like you're a professional and you take this seriously. This isn't just a means for a paycheck. And that just, if you're going to do anything, I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's working at Quick Trip. You're a professional and you're going to show up and execute on what you're supposed to do and go the extra mile. That's the first one. And then the war of art, which is most applicable to what we're talking about right here, is that whole book is about resistance and how it's a play from the famous book, The Art of War by Lao Tzu. But the war of art is that battle when you're sitting at a blank page, or in sales, a territory spreadsheet, and the resistance of what's in front of you to get started and to ship it and commit to producing. That is a war of resistance, and resistance is always there. It's your comfortable bed when it's cold outside, and that it's the resistance pulling you there because it's so comfortable. It's the burger and fries when you really want to be having a nice high protein whole food salad or bowl. This resistance is everywhere. It's social media, and it's so good. He's such a good writer. I'll stop in a second here, but he wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance, and he had this resistance his whole life, typewriter. And that was his success. And it took him, I forgot how old he was. I want to say he was in his 50s, but he's born in 43. And Bagger Vance didn't get picked up as a film until 2000 something. So read that book.
I wanted to pick those
read
up.
all of those. They're so short. They're quick.
Well, so Jen Gottlieb, who I heard the resistance and intuition thing from, she said one of her favorite quotes from Stephen Pressfield is, don't prepare, begin. Like just start, just go, just start. And it's funny because part of the Apoflow stuff is all about, part of the foundation is preparation, but it's not paralysis by analysis preparation. It's more about putting in the work on a daily routine, daily activities, preparing your mind, preparing your body, preparing your skill set for the opportunities. But once you've got the idea and you've got the opportunity and it aligns, don't prepare, just start building, just start creating. Just take the action and go all in, and then find out what you're capable of. But I love what you said. With the war of art, and like you're looking at a blank page and you're like, how am I going to write this whole book? I've got a blank page, or how am I going to knock out this whole territory? It reminds me of the tennis analogy of game, set, match. Like if you go into it, I'm going to win the match. You're already lost. Like you may think you're going to win the match, but if you go into it and I'm going to win every point, I'm just going to focus on winning every single point, and that's what's going to happen. That's going to get me my game, and then that's going to get me my set, and then that's going to get me my match. You can't win the match if you don't win all the games and sets and points before it. So it's that compounding type focus of the daily tasks, the daily routines, the daily things that you're putting in that will get you to win the match of your life, whatever that looks like for you.
It's so perfect, such a perfect metaphor. And like you can go down this with any sport. Sport's an easy one to do it with. But golf, same way. You go out saying you want to shoot a specific number, you are so screwed.
Yeah.
And then you can break it down to even a hole. You've got a hole with water on it. It's the number one handicap. Oh, I'm going to avoid the water. No, like one shot at a time. If it was good, reproduce it. If it was bad, you've got to forget about it. Easier said than done. But that's the micro. Right. This is when we have to get into the micro. The macro is for big dreaming, but you dial it down one step at a time. That's just life. It sounds so simple when you break it down this way, but moment to moment, that's all it is. It's a compilation of moments. And that's what we come back to on this podcast every time. But those moments can slip away. They can be very fleeting and we waste them.
Yeah. And sometimes
I know I do.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes they do become those pivotal moments that you're looking for. And you're like, holy shit, you look back and you're like, damn, if I didn't do that, or if I didn't go to that event, or if I didn't do this, or I didn't talk to that person, or I didn't develop that relationship or whatever, like who knows where I'd be right now, you know?
The butterfly effect.
Yeah. Speaking of golf, every time I see the water, I tell myself not to hit the water and I hit the water. So how do I fix that? I got to keep it positive, right? Like don't instead of saying don't hit the water, say hit the fairway or what's the mindset? You're like the golf guru. How do you not hit the water?
I try to make it disappear because half the time the water doesn't come into play. If like most golf courses are designed, sure, there's some island greens and stuff like that. But most of the par threes, if you carry it, if there's water in front, it doesn't even exist. But like what I like even better a metaphor here is F1 driving because they're very specific about this. When an F1 driver or any race car driver sees a wreck, you cannot. Even though you would think, oh my God, they need to find where the wreck is to make sure to avoid it. The statistics are off the charts that once you see the wreck to monitor, you are drawn toward the wreck or toward the wall. So they tell F1 drivers literally to overcompensate with a margin away from the wreck because they're moving so fast that you're drawn toward the problem. And this is another just life in general. The power of thoughts that Zanzibar, we talked about up at Summit quite a bit, is how quickly you can train your mind. You start thinking about your debt or the issue that you're having with your spouse. You keep your mind is going to continue to feed those thoughts and compound them. So you have to immediately snap and say, what are the solutions? What's the inverse? And that is when your mind is going to start traveling there. And again, I always get frustrated because it can sound so simple, but it's literally creating the space between your thoughts to bring that gun to the knife fight. You are in charge of your mind and your thoughts. And how do you have the space and awareness to know when you're thinking about it? It's your consciousness and being able to have that conversation with yourself. To me is the most important thing you can do and spend time working on.
Yeah. And I think the easiest way to do that is to get moving, get out of the house, get away from stagnation, get away from, if you're concerned, you have financial concerns or you got other concerns or whatever, and it's a little bit out of your control. Like you're not going to fix your money problems today. Like, it's just not going to happen if you've got them. Right. And so dwelling on them doesn't help anybody. So what are the things you can figure out and start putting into motion today that 6 months from now, the picture starts looking a little better?
Atomic Habits, your boy.
Yeah, exactly. And so, there's like real life issues that everyone goes through, myself included. And the easiest way for me to get out of it is if I'm in a rut like that, music always gets me out of it. Like a podcast and a book is when I'm in the mindset and I want to learn and I want to soak things in. But if I'm like, I need to crawl out of this, I'm sprinting, right? Like I'm going as fast as I can towards what I think the ultimate vision is. And I'm putting in all the work. But when you're in a hole, sprinting you can't get out of the hole. You got to figure out a way to climb out of that hole and then continue sprinting because there's holes all along the way. Like you're just going to fall into them and your mental state's going to change. It's very challenging to keep a constant positive mental state, even as much as you exude it into the world. everybody has it. Everybody's going to fall into those holes. And so it's hard to sprint through the hole. It's the resistance. So the way I do it is I throw the ruck on, I take the dog for a walk, and I throw on my playlist, and it just 35 minutes, 40 minutes. Sometimes it does the trick that day. Sometimes it takes a couple of days. But if I just keep up with the routine that I've set forth myself, on Monday I do this, on Tuesday I do this, on Thursday I do, whatever. If I continue it, but sure enough, every single time within 24 to 72 hours, I'm like out of it and back in control of where I want to go. And sometimes it's quicker than that. But if it depends on, what's going on, it could be as long as that. But I never let it go longer because I continue with the routine and the positive habits that I've developed, and the identity shift. And that's where the magic happens.
Yeah, mine's walking, the cold, and meditation. Because it's really hard for me just to meditate on the spot when, even as much as I love it, if there's an issue coming up, it's really hard for me to just stop. And to your point, the mind follows the body. So it's a walk because it's the most readily available to me. I don't care if it's 112. I'm going to go walk for 25 minutes. I'm going to be just fine. And then almost always solves it. And if it doesn't, it's like, all right, I got to get in cold water. And then I can get myself in a spot to get with the thoughts. And those are the 3 most accessible things that I've found. And it might not be it for you. I think that everyone has walking. If you can just
there's no
walk.
reason. Yeah. If you've got the ability to walk, there's no reason to not walk.
That's a good point. Not everybody can walk. I shouldn't have. But most people can walk. And there's so many things coming out about the reasons for it are just the way that our eyes work in regard to seeing objects in our peripherals moving past us. Like we are leaving things in the past. That is a part of it. And your body, obviously blood flow, oxygenation, all of that is a part of it. But you are moving through space and literally getting out of the instance of consciousness that you were in. So it's like, again, back to the simple things, just go for a long walk and try to leave your phone. I love my podcasts and I rarely do this, but if you walk without your phone, whole nother level.
Yeah. Walking inside. Through my neighborhood, I don't necessarily love walking in silence because it's not very silent. Like, I don't know, if you're in camping or you're out in like the pines, like that's legit. Like there's no music playing, there's no nothing. I get you there. But if you are going to have your phone, it's not in your hand. It's like, if you've got a ruck on, it's like in the zipper in the ruck. So it's like there just to play music, but it's not anything. I'm not scrolling as I'm walking. Right. I think that's kind of what you're getting at is you're not on your phone to be distracted by other things. You're trying to be in the moment. But yeah, that absolutely works. And you know what I love seeing is some of the guys in our group starting to buy rucksacks or ruck vests or backpacks and like getting after it there. It's such a good complement to your normal workout routine, whether it's 20 pounds or 40 pounds or whatever. Are you going to go to see Casey? He's just bringing the Rise and Ruck Phoenix back.
It's funny. I just put it on the calendar and sent out an invite to a fellow rucker that we can bring into the group. So I'm looking forward to that. Really,
it's gonna be good, dude. It's right in your backyard. It's almost like if you have the ability to walk, you have no excuse. It's literally 2 minutes from you.
The past 6 that you all have done or that Casey's done, I'm like, there is no excuse for this. But anyway, I'm looking forward to that. Listen to this, Jim. Resistance by definition is self-sabotage, but there's a trick. You can't overcome it by sheer force. You can only defeat resistance by becoming a professional. Are you paralyzed with fear? That's a good sign. Fear is good. Like self-doubt, fear is an indicator. Fear tells us what we have to do.
That's crazy. That's so good.
The book is so good. And he's such a good writer. I don't know how it took him that long to succeed, except for resistance, which is like Inception. The problem was the solution.
How many has he written?
A lot. He's got one that's like the warrior ethos that I love. It's more of a masculine, like goes you back to like the Athenian, like the Romans and the Greeks, and just the warrior ethos that we get. And how do we bring it to modern day? Like that's what we're missing is like, again, the comfort. Like warriors didn't have the comfort, and of course we don't want to go backwards, but we can use it. Like the discomfort of a ruck or cold water. It's why these Spartan races are so popular, and as much flack as they get, Jocko and Goggins are having such a moment because we know in our heart of hearts that we're soft. We just are. I know I am.
There was I have no idea who it was, but it was a video I saw where the guy was giving, like, he goes on his bike rides and he's in hilly terrain or whatever. And so you have the bike up is the hard part, and then the bike down is easy. And he's like, dude, I had just an epiphany of I'm riding up and I hate it. Like, it just sucks. Like, this is the worst part of the ride. And then I get to the top and then I cruise down. I'm like, oh, so nice. I can relax. And he's like, that's such a soft mentality. Like I should be excited for the hills and pissed off that I have to go downhill. Like, because if I'm not doing the hard stuff, I'm not growing. I'm not expanding. I'm not challenging myself. And I'm just taking the easy road. And just nailed exactly what you were talking about is you've got to continue putting, sometimes I wonder though, like with Goggins, like how intense he is. Like, is that fun? That's a different beast. Like if that's fun, like, constant, just constant pain, like
it's
putting
true
your body
ownership
through that.
over your mind.
Yeah.
Talk about bringing a gun to night.
Yeah.
This morning, I did a early morning private one-on-one with my jiu-jitsu coach, who's going to be coming on. One of my jiu-jitsu coaches, Fred, who will be on the pod soon. He, God, you're going so hard for these, even just the warm-up, that you get a minute of rest, and watching those seconds count down, you're just like trying to enjoy every minute. Catching your, he's like, all right. And like very little leniency. It's like he starts as soon as the counter's done. It's just like, oh my gosh. And it's just like, that's not even a full round. Like the black belts go 10 minutes nonstop.
Yeah.
It's just like there's so many levels to this, and it's so good to get yourself in that zone because we're rarely there. We're rarely in that mindset.
How long you been doing jiu-jitsu now?
A year and a half.
Pretty consistently, right? Like at least once a week?
It's been, there've been some pretty big gaps in between. And like, that's been one of the things like at Summit that it's like, if you're going to do this thing, like upping the training from, 2 days a week and maybe a private. And it's been even, I've gone for like a month off over the course of that. And it's just like consistency is so hard there. We're trying to be consistent on this podcast and obviously in your day-to-day employment. And we're kind of airing it all out here at Junto. Like to work in something like that, it has to move up the chain and just become a non-negotiable. It's been really hard. Hard hobby and sport, not to mention it's just you're in pain all the time.
Well, why do you keep going back to it? Like, what does it give you? What do you get out of it?
Honestly, it's like, I refuse to quit on this. And it's funny. I was just having a conversation with a colleague he's going to retire because his shoulder's so banged up, and I'm trying to avoid that. But it's like, I just can't, like, you've quit a number of things. Yeah, I've quit a number of things in my life, and this is one that I'm just not willing to. Like, it's going to be until my body like gives out, like I can't do it. I refuse. I'm just at the age where I've quit on a number of things in my life, and I don't, like, I have golf and this podcast is a hobby, but it gives so much that even though it's been a slow, and that's the thing, there's no instant gratification in it. Like it's too rewarding. So I'm just being stubborn, quite honestly.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of how I feel about, Saturday mornings pickup basketball. Like I do it, I'm not training for it, but I do it as like an escape from the day to day, or just everyday life, like not even work. It's an escape from everything. Like when you're on the court for 2 hours, you're not thinking about anything. You're just playing freely. And it's like, it's amazing. And then when you're done, you're just like, I just spent all morning burning 2,000 calories. And now I have the whole weekend ahead of me. Like there's nothing better, but I'm not
just
going
empty.
Yeah. Although I do have to take some breaks because I did go like 6 weeks in a row and I'm like banged up, dude. Like we're getting old. Like my shoulder, like I feel like my shoulder popped out last time and my knees are cracking all the time now. And I'm like, I gotta I want to keep the longevity of this here, I got to take care of myself a little bit more.
That's too spot on. Paula was talking about it this weekend too, because she's been going so hard on the spin, and she's like, "Oh, my hip and my arm." She's like, "It's really setting in that we're at that midlife."
I don't like it,
and the numbers are real. I didn't think it would ever come. Yeah.
Are you? So I'm asking about the jiu-jitsu thing because I want, like, are you? I think you could do like a tournament. Like, I think you could train and like do something with it. I mean, it's just like it's an awesome thing. Like, what a cool thing. I'm going to challenge you on this podcast. By the time you're 40, get yourself into it's like, you got plenty of time. But
no, I'm going to compete. It's, again, the consistency hasn't been there yet, but working with Fred, like, he's competing. I'm going to his tournaments. I've seen it. I can already imagine what the feeling is like going into a combat sport. And yeah, I mean, that's the goal. If you're going to do, I'm at least going to compete at least once, right?
Yeah, just try it. Yeah.
Just to have that So
is it, so I don't know much about it. I mean, obviously I know, like, it's not wrestling, but it's like similar type setup, right? You got the circle, you got your, you're going against your guy, and it's like the whole purpose is, right, to try and get the other guy out of the circle, essentially.
Yeah, it's grappling.
Yeah.
So you have two forms: gi or no gi. Gi is the uniform that you see in other martial arts. We always joke around and say it's adults rolling around in pajamas, but with your belt on. And then no gi is in more just very tight athletic wear, higher speed. You don't have anything to grip onto. The grips in the gi, which is what I've been mainly training, make it. You're going to submit in the competition form. It's submission and then a point system, because a lot of times you get so strategic that it's like physical chess. One move is a counter move. You're trying to predict your opponent's next move. You're playing to your strengths. Some guys are playing a heavy guard, which is more, using your legs. Taller guys like you and I typically have a stronger guard. Shorter, stockier guys are going to have more of a wrestling, grappling pressure approach. It's physical chess, and you don't have, that's to your point on the basketball. It's like, there's no space mentally or physically for anything else. It is productive escapism. Well, productive until you injure yourself, but
right.
It's there's a reason why the folks that are into it are so into it, because it's, once it gets you, it's like, man, you could just think about it. It's endless. It's infinite. Like, jiu-jitsu is still evolving. There are no limits on how it, just like most great games, like, it's how Steph Curry has changed basketball, shooting from deep range.
Right.
That wasn't a thing, however many years ago. I don't know when it actually officially took in, but like,
long range Ainge was shooting just barely beyond the arc, not like Steph Curry shooting at half court and drilling from the logo.
And that's what's so fascinating. Like Kotler, Art of the Impossible. It's like humans we're getting so good at improving all these areas of life. It's infinite. It's like, what is impossible anymore?
Well, and going back to resistance and intuition, it's all of those people that fought the battle through resistance. Like, they just said, no, I'm just going to continue the work, and I'm going to continue to make this happen. Like Steph Curry's story, obviously one of the biggest underdogs ever to become the greatest shooter of all time in the history of the world. Like, it's like, how is anyone going to top that? But 15, 20 years from now, you're going to have someone that's probably going to end up topping that. It's just wild. But
when you think about it, it's human evolution in a nutshell, just from a cellular perspective. Like, just continuing development, pushing through and growing and altering your makeup to fit the scenario that you find yourself in. It's just a constant evolution where it's what makes us who we are as a species.
100%.
It's growing past resistance.
Well, I think that was a good rip, little back-to-back pod there. I think this was a follow-up from our previous conversation on the Aspire tour. So this is just a continued conversation. It turned out to be a pretty good episode for the listeners. I think it was a great one. Resistance versus intuition. When you find yourself on the path, you're on the right path, and you get that roadblock, and deciding in your gut, is this intuition to stop and turn around, or is this resistance only and I got to push through? more often than not, your gut will tell you that you need to push through and continue on the path. So I love it, dude. It was a great pod.
Awesome freestyle. Thank you, Cody Sanchez and Stephen Pressfield. We'll link to those books in the show notes. Back at you next week.